Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Welcome to my favorite video to film every year, and that is my top 10 favorite books of the year. I have 10, 11, because I did have a tie and it's my list. I can do what I want. I had 18 books that I gave 6 stars to this year. That is something that I started doing about 2.5 years ago as a way to delineate books that were more than a 5-star, because I give a lot of books 5 stars. If you've watched my yearly wrap-up, you'll know I gave 102 books 5 stars. But I like to have a little extra special place, and so I created a 6-star. And what I have done for the last 3 years is that about November, I usually start around Thanksgiving, I start rereading those 6-star books. That doesn't mean I don't add in more books. There are some books that made it onto this list right at the last minute because they just deserved that place. And then I fill out this little form that I created just for myself to help me give these books a score. So I rate them based on, let's see if I can remember it. I'll put it up here for you guys, but I rate it based on the characters, the plot, the uniqueness of the plot, the spice, the conflict resolution, and the emotional factor. And then I this year created a new little bonus category, which was the emotional punch on top of that. So how much I cried, basically, because you'll find I'm going to say it many times that, oh, I cried in this one. Yeah, that's going to get said a lot of times because I will have some emotion and I wanted a way to rate that. So I did it based on are my eyes tearing up? Are they slipping down? Or am I ugly crying? And that gave the book kind of a bonus thing. Now, at the end of that, I usually have a lot of books that are tied with each other, but it really helps me, kind of weed it down. It makes it easier for me. At the end of the day, there are still a couple that, they rate lower, maybe on the spice. But for me, they were this, so they get put where they put, and that's why it's just for me. But I've had many viewers who told me they now reread their books in December, and I just find it brings so much joy. It also takes a lot of stress out of the end of the year, because I'm not necessarily still looking for another book to squeeze into my favorites list, but it's just been amazing. So we're going to start with my runners up, and then we will start the countdown. So I have 7. Okay, I have 7 books that were still all 6 stars. I still loved them so much, but they didn't make it quite into the top 10. But these were all still favorites of the year. So I'm just going to show you these ones real quickly. I've talked about most of these ones ad nauseum with them being favorites, so you can find them in other times where I am. So the books that I also gave 6 stars but aren't in the top are A House of Sky and Breath, Between Wrath and Mercy, Stolen by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd, Always Practice Safe Hex by Juliet Cross, Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton, Soul Eater by Lily Mayne, and Terrene by Amara Ray. And this isn't in any particular order. These ones are just the ones that didn't make it in the top 10. Okay, so let's start with number 10. And here we have The Temptation of a Highlander by Elisa Braden. I am going to put this one on my little display because it's shiny and it will distract me while I'm trying to film. The Temptation of a Highlander is book 3 in Elisa Braden's Midnight in Scotland series, and this one is about Clarissa Meadows and Campbell McPherson. Clarissa needs to flee to Scotland with her grandmother because she is being stalked by this madman who is coming after her pets and making her life miserable, trying to get her to be his woman, and she's just not interested, and he keeps pushing. And so she decides to go visit her friend who has married a McPherson, and go stay with them, and very quickly she realizes that he's followed her there. However, the McPhersons, they can handle themselves. And there's Campbell, who is the grumpiest of the grumpy brothers, who has very much decided to be a recluse and that he isn't going to love again. He lost his childhood love. And he doesn't expect to ever find that again. But he feels inexplicably drawn to Clarissa. Clarissa definitely has the hots for him, as well as making inappropriate innuendos whenever he's around. And when it becomes important for her to be kind of separated from the rest of them to not only protect her, but keep her pregnant friend safe, she agrees to go live at Campbell's home with him, which he's definitely not been taking care of it the best. And so Clarissa, she puts on her English breeding gloves and she starts decorating his home and bringing it up to scratch. And though this madman won't leave them, it only makes Campbell more determined to protect her and to make her his when this psychopath is trying to take her. So this series is pretty dark for a historical. You maybe wouldn't think it from the looks of it, but there are some trigger warnings, mainly the harm of animals in this one, and even a death of some collateral damage that gets in the villain's way. And it isn't the only one in this series that has dark parts, but 2 definitely has some of those as well. But Elisa Brighton's writing is so charming. It's so easy to consume. Her audiobooks are excellent. Her narrator is above average. And I highly recommend you try the Midnight in Scotland series. I know people are going to ask, yes, you could just dive into this one if you would like to, but you're going to have the best time if you start with the first book. If you start with The Making of a Highlander, you're going to have the best time. But yes, you could just read this one if you wanted to. So this one was a 2.5 on my Swoon scale and a 3 on my Spice scale. Campbell is a dirty talking boy. Okay, he's a dirty talking boy. The number 9 spot on my favorites list goes to Give Me More by Sarah Kate. Now, I know I'm not the only one who was absolutely blown away by this series this year. I was lucky enough to actually read an arc of praise. It just showed up on my NetGalley, and I was like, excuse me, this cover is on NetGalley, and it's Sarah Kate, who I had quite enjoyed her book Burn for Me previously, and I read a few of her other things, but when I saw praise, when I saw that it was what it was about, that it was the first in this new series, the Salacious Players Club, she had all of them named, she had shared what the kinks were already, and I already had my eye on Give Me More and Mercy, which came after this one, because this one was going to be an MMF, and book 4 was a older woman who was a dom, and I was in, but I really loved Praise. I liked Eyes on Me, but Give Me More really blew me away. I'm very picky about my MMF. Number 1, I want them to actually be MMF, which if you don't know, if you're new to poly or menage or RH relationships, where the letters touch is the characters who will be touching each other. That's why I get very upset if a book is called MMF by an author who doesn't realize what they're doing, and it's actually like an MFM, which means the 2 men share the woman. The men don't share each other. I just don't find those books particularly fulfilling for me because I want everyone to be in love. However many people there are, I want them all to be in love, which means sexually attracted, which means fucking each other. Okay, we're just putting it out there. And anyway, this isn't a rant about that. This is about why I love this. But I was nervous about that. Even though I knew Sarah Kate would give me that, there's also the other factor of like, is this just for the erotic nature? Did the author just make this MMF to be titillating? Which, of course, that's partially it. Like, come on. But what is the emotional content of the story? And this one really got me. We have Hunter and Isabel, who have been together for many years now. Drake was / is Hunter's best friend and has become a very close friend with Isabel too. They kind of look at him as their like unofficial, like their son friend who, you know, he will stay at their house sometimes. He's been the third wheel in their relationship. But Drake is in this interesting position. Like, he's seen as a playboy. He is bisexual. He's out. He also is an architect, and so he will like build sets and build rooms for the Salacious Players Club. And so at the beginning of this story, these three are going on a road trip to check out different sex clubs and kink clubs throughout the nation to get ideas and to maybe find some guest speakers, some guest doms or trainers to come by and teach things, you know, kind of share the knowledge. And Drake is in a tough position because he's seen as this playboy, but it's really because he's in love with Hunter, and he's been in love with Hunter for years. Even, you know, while like he still cares about Isabel, he thinks she's pretty sexy too. But he can never let those feelings be known because he can't ruin this friendship in any side. He does not want to ruin this friendship. And so he's had to keep himself very careful and very aloof. And when Hunter actually starts to get some thoughts that he may be interested in a cuckolding scenario, like for, you know, he thinks he might want to see Drake fuck his wife. And when he first shares this, it's very much like repels Isabel and Drake, because Drake is like, what are you trying to do? You're going to take my family away from me because you want to see me touch Isabel. Of course I'm attracted to her. But once you see me with her, I can never just be your guys' friends. And Isabel is thinking, am I not enough for you? Why do you want me to be with someone else? What does this mean? So he doesn't go about bringing it up in the smoothest way. However, these are people who they are around kink all the time. And so, you know, he really has to say, like, I feel like you're not thinking this through. I think you're only thinking about, like, am I not going to be okay with it? Which is a totally fair thing. And Hunter goes about convincing them that there's more than that. And not only does he want to see Isabel with Drake, he starts to be attracted to his friend on his own as well. But what really made this story powerful is not just kind of the, you know, taboo nature of inviting someone into a marriage that is very solid, very well, is that Hunter has a lot of internalized homophobia to deal with, because he had a very homophobic father who, if he, you know, wasn't perfectly manly enough, he would be mistreated by his father. He was mistreated by his father no matter what. His father was horrible. But though that is a voice that he just can't get out of his head. And so he loves his friend. He doesn't mind that his friend is bisexual, but he doesn't realize that he's craving some of that interactions himself. And that's really where this book shined for me, was in how Hunter was having to deal with the feelings coming up for him and what that meant. And I feel like Sarah Kate did that so powerfully. So all the smut and the sexiness was the whipped cream and cherry on top, but it was also the entry point for Hunter realizing that I'm not just aroused seeing my wife be pleasured, I'm aroused by the man who's doing it. And I think she hits that balance very well. And I really felt the connection between all three of them and their individual relationships. I think she did that so well. And that is my number one demand when I read an MMF that's supposed to be more than just sexy. It's also why polyamory with more than 3 people becomes an unstable cart for me, because there always is a relationship that's suffering. And then I don't believe that it could work long term. But this relationship is beautiful and I loved it so much. And that is why it is number 9 on my list. This was a 2.5 on my Swoon Factor, and this was like a 4.5 on my spice scale. It was number 8. I am thrilled to have this author back on my top 10 list. I'm so happy that we were blessed with this book, because though I was new to this author in 2020. She is a well-loved author, but this was the first new book of hers in years, and I was lucky enough to be on the ARC team for this book, and that is Monroe by Kresley Cole. So yeah, this is book umpteenth in the series. I think it's being called like 18 or 19. I'm not even sure at this point, but I have had her books very high on my list before. Lothair was one of my favorite books a couple years ago. I also reread Lothair this year in October, and it brings me so much joy. So this one I was a bit nervous about. However, I wasn't as nervous as maybe some other people were because her works were pretty new to me, right? So it's not like I had been waiting for the amount of years that other people had for this book to show up. You know, I'd only been waiting about a year and some change. And then to make it on her ARC team and get to experience this book as one of the first people who was getting to was a joy. And this one, we're getting to see Monroe McGrieve, who has been put in a horrible position. He has been tortured by his warlock captors, and he's even had to see his mate die in front of him because these warlocks use time travel and they're in like a different world, and they bring his mate in and they force him to bite her, and when she doesn't change, he's forced to throw her body into this pit and watch her disintegrate. When he is able to escape from his captors, he is able to use mystical, magical, I won't be able to explain all that, to go to a time where his woman is actually alive. She's actually about to get married to someone else, and he snatches her up, and then we're off on the run. But the thing is, his mate, her name is Kirani Kadrina, or Ren is what she goes by. She is a hunter of the lore. And so she is not going to be captured by a Like-A lying down or make it easy for him. And boy, does she give him hell. And boy, is it an adventure. And it also just rips at your soul. It's very spicy. I think it moves the story along very well. And hopefully next year or a little, we will be getting another one. We don't know the name. We don't know what the couple will be. But Kresley Cole is back on the writing trip. She is going. She is pushing forward. She's doing her best. And I fully support her. I even do want to try her Arcana Chronicles. I've been told by my friend that that is like a love triangle scenario that starts like YA and gets more new adult as it goes. I even have the first book in the series, and I would love to catch up with that series eventually. But this one made number 8 on my list. This was a 2 on the Swoon Factor for me, and this was a 3 on the Spice scale, and I cried quite a bit for this one. Kresley Cole puts such high stakes in her books, and I say this time and time again, no one writes fated mates like her. No one writes fated mates who you have no idea how they'll be able to overcome their issues and be together, because their goals are at such cross purposes that you don't know how it can work. And she does it every time, and I believe it and I love it, and that's why she had to be in my top 10 of the year, because she just does it. I'm sure it's not effortless. I'm sure it's not, but to me, it is so effortless how she does it, and it impresses me every time. Number 7, an author who made my list twice, and I think is the only author this year who made my list twice, and that is Resting Witch Face by Juliet Cross. Of course, we have to show off the lovely art print of Jules and Ruben. This is probably the book that I was anticipating the most, y'all. So I know a lot of people are anticipating Henry and Clara. I'm anticipating them too. Definitely am. But I have a soft spot for second chance romance. It is probably in my top like 3 favorite tropes, okay? And I know it's not everybody's favorite trope, because here's the thing. Though it is in my top 3 favorite tropes, when it's done well, second chance romance is very often not done well. And I know that's how Juliet feels too, because she's told me there's many second chance romance that she's read that they just flop because there's not a good enough reason for the couple to break up. And when they get back together, they haven't changed enough. And so it's like, well, if this relationship didn't work however many years ago and you haven't changed at all, how's it going to work now? And so those are the really big like expectations / demands that I have for making a second chance romance work, is that I need you to like tell me how they've changed and what's gone on. And Juliet does that in this book for me. So I want to be careful how I speak about this one, because Stay a Spell is still a series that I am pushing hardcore and I won't ever stop. So I don't want to spoil too much. But this one, as we said, this is a second chance. It's a second chance 12 years later. But we're dealing with witches and vampires, and they both have very extended lives. All of the books in this series are fated mates, so I don't consider that a spoiler to say that, even though the characters in here, not both of them, aren't aware of that immediately. But Reuben and Jules, we've seen them circling each other in previous books, and we knew that something went wrong, and we know that Jules has been very much like, Reuben, stay away from me, and that he's been biding his time. And when we get into this, Jules and Reuben need to go on a transcontinental mission to work on some things for the supernatural world. So Jules is the very high position in the supernatural world in New Orleans, and Reuben is the highest vampire in New Orleans. And they both get sent as representatives to help with this cause, which has to do with the werewolves. But I won't go into details about that because it's spoilers for before. But they are going on this mission. And Reuben, very early in this book, is telling Jules, like, time's up. Like, we're going to make it work now. And she's very skeptical about this. She doesn't want to risk her heart again. She doesn't know that they've changed enough, although she should. It's been many years and they're very different people now. And it's time. Like, it's time for them to work it out. And so through this road trip, we are starting to see like how they've changed. And when we get the flashback that really shows what was happening 12 years ago and why these two, who were actually like just getting together, they hadn't been together very long, they break up in this very dramatic fashion. And when you find out why, and you see the multi-layered reasons why Jules had to say, we can't ever be together because of, again, I don't want to spoil it, I understood. That doesn't make it less gut-wrenching. That doesn't make Reuben, like, ready to get on board with why they need to break up. But he has some clarity too, not immediately, but he knows how he fucked up. She knows how she fucked up. This isn't all on him. It seems like it's all on him, but it's not. It was both of them. And as they go through this journey, as they are fighting this cause, they show each other how they're different and that they both are willing to risk it again because now is their time. And to me, it was so powerful. I loved Jules so much. There was so much about her that I related to. She's probably the one in the series I relate to the most. The responsibility she carries, seeing her other loved ones get their HEAs and being genuinely happy for them, but also feeling that she had to give up something to maintain the level of independence and authority that she has, because the authority has to be from her. It can't be because people are scared of her boyfriend or because it's really her partner who's ruling the roost. Like, she is the power. And it takes a look at a career woman in a way that is very honest without leaning into the cliches. Because Jules, she knows what she gave up, and she knows why it's important she stick this road, and that's why she's very hesitant to mess with it, because it was very hard to get to this place. She's not an indifferent, cold woman. She's very warm and caring. She shows her love by cooking for her family. Oh boy, do I feel seen with this woman. But she also has had to have a certain persona to be the leader and, you know, enforcer that she is. And when she gets to let that go a bit with Ruben, when she gets to submit in the intimate ways with him, and when she gets to not necessarily submit, but collaborate with him to make decisions, she is now at a place where it's not so much that she was before threatened by it. I mean, she was, like, honestly, he was threatening her power in a not safe way. She has seen how he's matured and how they will be a powerhouse together. And to me, that's what a relationship is anyway. And when we look at Fated Mates, when we look at a supernatural view of it, we can see it in a very, like, clear way, in the way that their powers and their skills work together. So also, this is swoony as hell. Okay, let's just, I mean, let me show you this again. There's a flower crown. They're adorable. I love them so much. Ruben is very swoony. He has all the alpha things that we love, but he also is ready to just watch his woman be powerful. You know, he's the best of both worlds, to borrow a Hannah Montana saying. Like, he will step in and collaborate with her when needed, but he also will be like, you go, babe, you go, you got this. And that is the perfect mixer for me. But they get in the bedroom and he's like, I'm in charge. And she's like, let's go. And it's everything, you guys. It's everything that I want. And that's why this is number 7. This one is a 3.5 on my swoon scale and a 4 on my spice scale. Book number 6 on my list. This is one, if I thought that I related with Jules much, this heroine, I feel like my soul was kind of like ripped out to create her a little bit. I know that's crazy, but I connected with this heroine so much. And that is Entreat Me by Grace Draven. I read this one very early on in the year, and I got to reread it for a Patreon pick, and this book pops into my head weekly, if not daily. I think about this book. So, Entreat Me is a standalone novel by Grace Draven. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's a pretty dark one. I mean, there's lots of dark ones, but this one has a lot of elements of, like, the French TV show, I feel like, and some of the more obscure myths of Beauty and the Beast. And in this one, we have Louvain, who is a widow who has a younger half-sister that she absolutely loves. She has a father she loves too, but he's getting them in a bit of trouble in their small town that they live in. And her sister is being wooed by, is it Gavin? I think his name is Gavin. I can't remember his name. He's not the one I'm here for, okay? He's just not, okay. Oh, hold on. Yeah. But she has, like, been warning her sister, like, make sure this man wants to marry you before you get so head over heels for him. And then one day her sister just runs away with this boy. And Louvain is like, no. And so what does she do? She follows after. And she ends up in a magical wood at a magical castle where her sister has been taken because Gavin needs to find a bride to hopefully break a curse. Because guess what? His whole castle and his father are cursed. So we have Ballard of Tactor. He has been cursed even more so than Gavin, and he is slowly turning into a forest man, into this beast, and he gets tortured by this thing called the Flux, which, in my opinion, it's like a monster period, because he just goes through this crazy time where he can't like move, and he's being tortured. And like this castle, this curse that his dead wife put on them all, is like, will physically attack him. And the only hope is for his son to find a bride who will marry him, and then it should break the curse. And Gavin wants to try to convince this girl to marry him, and Lou is like, you're not taking my sister to your magical castle. What if you decide not to marry her, and then my sister is deflowered and you just ditch her? So Lou is begged by her sister, please, 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 like, let me stay here. Let me get to know him to see if I want to marry him. And she's like, okay, but I'm staying as chaperone because you ain't getting the cow for free, okay? And literally Lou will say stuff like this. And so her and her sister will like fight, but Lou loves her sister so much. Like, it comes across, and her sister knows it. Her sister's like, why do you have to be so controlling? And she's like, you are everything. You are young and sweet and pure, and like, I'm the hardened older sister. Now, a side note of this, I said she was widowed. One thing I loved, okay? I loved it so much. It brought me to more tears than anything else in this book. Lou had a wonderful husband. His name was Thomas. I could cry right now. He was an undertaker, so he had a tough job. So Lou has also seen some things in her days. But Thomas was a loving husband. He was good in the bedroom. He was kind to her. He was very, like, they were a team. And so she's very sad to have lost him. She doesn't expect to marry again. She believes she's had the joy that she's going to have. So she sees herself as kind of the like matronly older sister who's going to look out for her younger sister's virtue. And then she gets to this palace and she thinks that Gavin is kind of a scamp. And here, you've kidnapped my sister, and this castle in this enchanted place is pretty weird. And there's a grizzled old wizard who does weird things there. And then there's Ballard, who is the father, who is the lord of the manor. And like we said, he's taken on most of the curse that's happening here. And so he doesn't look handsome anymore, and he's in a lot of pain, and he looks like a beast. And Lou sees right to the heart of this man. And not only does she see to the heart of this man, she's very attracted to him. Like, they get their flirt on very soon. And he is so enamored by this badass chick who went headlong into the forest to chase after her sister to keep her safe, who's willing to stay in this magical castle so her sister can see if she falls in love. He is head over heels for her. And Louvain tells him, she's like, you want to sleep with me, don't you? And he's like, I mean, I would love to. In fact, he jokes a couple times about taking her to bed, and she's like, are you serious? Do you want to sleep with me? And he's like, I mean, yes, I do, but like, you don't have to sleep with me to live here. Like, I know I'm ugly. And she's like, I don't think you're that ugly. Because she can see him. She can see him. It's beautiful. But she says, she's like, I'm staying here for the winter, and I'm going to go home in the spring. Like, my father needs me. If my sister chooses to marry your son, I will see them wed, make sure it's good, and then I'm going to go home. But if you would like us to pleasure each other while we're here, I'd be up for it. And she's just so bold about it, and I love that. But of course, they can't help but fall for each other. And they don't even know if a love between her sister and Gavin will work. They don't know if Ballard is just going to continue to turn more into a monster. They don't know if this castle will kill them all. Like, they don't know. But this Beauty and the Beast retelling was beautiful to me. There are so many good quotes from this book. There's so many powerful moments. But Lou is a shining star for me. She is bold. She knows what her faults are. She is sassy. She is sexually experienced in a way where, like, she knows what she wants. She's not afraid to ask for it. Ballard is just so in awe of her and so turned on by her, and all of their scenes are so powerful, and I love it. I love it so much. And the happily ever after in this book is, oh God, it fills me with so much joy when we get the happily ever after in this book. There's a line at the end. Oh, I'm going to read it. I wasn't going to read quotes in this one, but I have to. It's so powerfully beautiful. So we're in the very, very end of this one. And I don't want to spoil that part of it, but she says a quote to him. She says, "You must live another 4 centuries, Ballard, as must I. Any less, and I'll feel cheated of loving the finest man I've ever known." And he says to her, he says, "My beauty, if we lived 1,000 years, I'd still feel cheated." And that seems like such like pretty words, but these two, they don't really do like pretty words. They very much like, they say powerful things, but they joke with each other. And so this moment when she says that to him, like, you must live another 4 centuries, Ballard. Any less and I'll feel cheated of days with you. And when he says, like, if we live 1,000, I'll still feel cheated. I just think it's so beautiful. These two who, you know, she hasn't known the amount of pain that he has. I mean, she lost her husband and he was wonderful, but, you know, he's literally been tortured for hundreds of years. And for them to have found this peace in each other and a second chance at love, and her sister and his son have love. I've never felt so triumphant at the end of a book. And yet this one was number 6. This one was number 6 because there's so much more to go. Anyway, we need to keep going. Because number 5 is my lovely Elena and Locke, and that is Sweet Like Poison by J. Wolfe. This is one of the few new adults that I read this year. I don't really read new adult much anymore, but I do read it for J. Wolfe because she writes very powerful. She doesn't write like fully dark romance with these. A couple of hers have leaned more into dubious consent stuff. This one doesn't have any of that. In fact, Lachlan is the consent king, and it's beautiful. But this one is great. If you love Yellowstone, I won't stop talking about this book. Yes, you could just read this one if you want, even though this is book 3 in the series. I highly recommend that you read all of them. Of course I do. I do love the other books in the series. But this is in my top 10, and so if you just want to read this one, you can. But this one is about these two that it's completely opposites attract. It shouldn't be enemies to lovers, but Locke, he has some misconceptions about Elena because she seems like a party girl. She seems like this or whatever. And you know what? She was at one time. And she was kind of a bully. But she's been through some hard things and she has learned her lesson. And she has taken actions to become a better person. This isn't just like, I want to be better. Like, no. She has actively made changes throughout all the books we've seen her in. She has made changes to become a better person. And so Locke, he's being kind of judgy. Locke is a country boy. He plans to go back to Montana to help run his family ranch. He's at the school that he's at to learn what he needs to learn and get out of there. He doesn't want to form any attachments. He's going to move along. And when Elena, who is actually his landlord and next door neighbor, they're the only two like people home for a weekend. Their friends are all gone. He helps her build a deck for her house, and they end up having a weekend fling. And this fling is kind of revolutionary for Elena because she hasn't been able to orgasm since she was raped. She was raped by her ex-boyfriend a few years ago, and she hasn't really been able to orgasm with a partner since then. So she hasn't really tried. And her and Locke have this fling, and the man just gets her going. And so they have this, like, their first sexual experience, and then he's kind of like very awkward and just like bye and like leaves, and she laughs and is in so much joy because this, you know, this big lumbering sexy cowboy, he gets her off, man. And it's a very powerful moment. Okay, it's a powerful moment. And so she wants to keep having this fling with him because he's doing it for her. And he's like, I don't want to get attached. Our friends are coming back. We can't do this anymore. And so she's like, oh, okay, it's done. I'm fine. She's really not that fine. And so we enter a bit of a back and forth. There are aspects of this novel that shouldn't work for me, but I kind of understood Locke's reasoning for being that way, but also he definitely does hurt Elena a few times because the girl seems tough, but she has a soft, squishy underbelly. And so Locke sees her as tougher than she is sometimes, but he also has some of the most tender moments that I've read in a book. The swoon factor for this book is way up there. It's like a 3.5 or a 4 for me. Where Locke messes up, he makes up for in his swoon moments. There is a scene in here where someone has put gum in her beautiful hair, her beautiful long blonde hair, which he actually calls her Elsa because of her beautiful hair. He sits her down and helps her get the gum out of her hair very patiently. He doesn't tease her about her hair. He knows she loves it. And he's just so kind in that. When she's being actively bullied by these girls in her class, he is ready to go to war for her. When they want to tease him for his job at the school, as he is a mechanic and a maintenance man there at the school, and they want to like tease on her for being with the janitor, she is ready to throw down that they would dare talk badly about Locke. And so it's such a powerful thing between these two, and it makes it that when Locke messes up, you want to be like, dude, you blew it. This woman is a queen, and not just because her nickname's Elsa. Like, she's a queen and you're fucking it up. But what's great about Locke is that he messes up, and he messes up a couple times. That's what I mean. Like, in this book, I'm like, how many times are you gonna mess up? Like, when I reread it, I was like, did he really fuck up this many times? But he owns it. He's not someone who hides from his mistakes or who shies away from when he fucks up. And when he messes up, the man mans up and goes in and fixes it and does what he needs to do. And that made this book just work for me. And this is another character who I loved. I can't say that I like related to her the way I do with someone like Levain or even Jules, because I'm not from the situations that she is. But her heart is so beautiful, and she hides it behind a lot of sarcasm and prickliness and acting like it doesn't bother her. And I really related to that, because I definitely come off as one way to people, but I have a very soft, squishy place that I may seem like I don't need anyone in my life, but when I get ignored or when people aren't straight with me about where I sit, I feel very rejected, and it causes me to have a lot of like internal struggle. So I really related to that parts of Elena. And so I just loved these two. So yeah, this was very high on the swoon scale. This was a 4 on the spice scale. Locke has such a dirty mouth. And also, he may mess up in his communication in some aspects because he's not a very like loquacious man, but in the bedroom, very good communication. Again, consent is king. There's a time where she has a little flashback about something, and he immediately is like, hey, what's going on? Like, and she's like, no, babe, like, I'm here with you. I just don't do this thing. And he's like, hey, done. It's over. And there's a beautiful moment where, oh, I wasn't going to read that quote either. I won't read that one, but I'll remind it, where after they have that, where they have this little blip in their sex, she's like, okay, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you why, but I need you to listen and then like not internalize this, because what we have is the best in my life, and I can't have you treat me like a flower because of it. And so she explains what happened, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that I did this thing to you, which it's a little thing. Like, it's a little thing. It's not a big thing. It just gave her a flashback. And she's like, no, you don't change anything, because if you do, if you treat me differently than you've done, which has been the best of my life, I might as well go lay down in the grave of that man. Because yes, the man who raped her is dead. It's wonderful. But anyway, she's like, I might as well go lay down in the grave with him, because you've killed what's happening now. And that's a lot for him to take, but he's like, okay, you have to tell me when anything happens. She's like, I did. I told you. You listen to me. That is all I've ever wanted. That's all I've ever needed. And you give it to me. And that is why, for all his faults, Locke is a book boyfriend forever. Forever, you guys. He's brilliant. All right. Book, which is number 4 on my list, is Brutal Vows by J.T. Geisinger. You know we have a J.C. Geisinger on the list. Last year, I had 3 of her books as 6-star books. This was the last book in Queens and Monsters, and you bet your boots it ended up on this list. In this list, we have Reina and Spider. They make me so happy. Reina is the Black Widow of the Italian Mafia, okay? But she did not kill her husband. She's been a widow for a while now. She lives in her brother's home. Her niece is going to be put into an arranged marriage, and she's not happy with that, especially when she finds out it's going to be to this brute of an Irish mobster, who is much older than her niece and who looks like trouble. Spider, he doesn't really want to be getting into a marriage either, but he's had some hurt that happened to him in the previous book, and he's like, why not? Let me be the one who does this arranged marriage, because, you know, Daddy Declan, he already has a wife, so he can't be the one used for this arranged marriage, so he signs up for it. He meets the woman he's supposed to marry, which is this young girl, and he's kind of like, okay, this is not what I want, but I'm going to do my best, and I'll marry her, and then I'm not going to sleep with her. I'm going to put her in a home and, like, leave her there. In a beautiful home, of course. But then he meets Raina, who he calls the wee viper, and guess what? Vipers eat spiders for dinner, so he's in for it. And these two are sparring from the moment that they meet, because that's what JT does so well. Her banter is unparalleled. Her banter is above all other banter. It is the best. It's the best. It's so good. It's so good. And I die for it. I die for it. It's amazing. I love it. And I just love where this story went, okay? This story did something that I've read in historical romances before, but I haven't really read in, well, I've actually read it in a different mafia romance before too. That's funny. I have read it in a couple. But it's something I never get tired of reading, okay? Because I think it's amazing. But anyway, so for a good portion of this book, he is engaged to her niece. But of course, that's not where it goes. And Raina is Raina for a reason. Her name means queen. And she is the queen, okay? She's the queen in the Queens and Monsters, for real. The other mobsters might call their women their queens, but Raina, she is / becomes the queen in this. And she has trauma in her past. Again, she has a dead husband. She ain't sad that he's dead. She did not kill her husband. She did not. And Spider is just so intoxicated by her. And when these two end up together and things finally get started, we discover that Spider, he has a praise kink. He has a praise kink. There's this beautiful moment where Raina, I mean, she loves when he's praising her. And when she starts praising how strong and sexy he is and how well he fucks her, he just lights up. And she's like, oh my God. My strong, filthy mobster likes it when I praise him. And girls and boys, I'm telling you, you haven't read Praise Kink until you've read JT Geisinger write it and Spider receiving it and what he does, okay? There is also role-playing in this book that has to do with some romance novels that Raina loves. And it's delightful, okay? This has touch her and you die. Not even just touch her and you die. Disrespect my wife and you die. Above all else. It's so great. And this one is also a bit of a reverse Grumpy Sunshine. Granted, Spider is a bit grumpy at the beginning of this book, but he definitely is the more sunshine of the two of them. He has the more fragile emotions of the two of them, but in a way that only JT Geisinger can do it. Like, it's brilliant. So, yes. This one is a 4 on my Swoon scale. Oh, so good. And this is a 4 on my Spice scale. JT Geisinger, I can't wait to see what she's doing next. She has a 4-book series coming next year, and I can't wait. Number 3 on mine. These top ones, y'all. This was difficult. And I will just say now, the book that I'm about to show, I was very sure for 70% of this year that this book was going to be number 1. But, of course, that was before I read these last 3, which were ones that I read pretty recently. Well, comparatively. Anyway, point being, we're taking a long time with this video, but we knew that would happen. But one of the factors for me is, like, the happiness by the end. I actually just made a video about this. I don't think it's going up until after this video, though, because I want to get these end of the year ones out, which is about my angst versus HEA factor. And this book, the angst is very, very high, right? Like it is through the roof. And while this one doesn't break the scale for me, it doesn't overcome it the way that other books do. So anyway, number 3 on my list is Manacled by Sin Len Yu. All right. Gorgeous. Yes. This is my bound copy by Joe from Not So Average Joe. I have other fanfics that are bound for me by my friend Mel. No, you cannot just go out and buy one of these unless you find someone who binds them. I have a whole video about fanfic and like how it gets bound and things like that. I'll link that video if I remember. Otherwise, it's only a few weeks back. You can go find it. But this was hand bound by me as a gift for my birthday. Joe is the reason that I read this book. Actually read this book the last 3 days of 2021, but I was like, this is going in my favorites of 2022. It's going in there. So I love this story. I'm going to put it down because it's very heavy and hard to hold up. It weighs a lot. But this was my first fanfic in what I'm calling my modern age, because I keep saying it's like my first fanfic, but like I did read fanfic way back, way back. But this is the first Harry Potter fic I've read, and the first one that really like started all of it for me this year. This year now I've read over 50 fanfics, and I've plan to read it next year. Like I'm actively incorporating it into my TBR in 2023. So this one is a dark alternative universe tale of Harry Potter. This one is a Dramini fic. It is like the penultimate Dramini fic. It's also a mixture of like a Handmaid's Tale mixed with some other dystopian worlds, right? And so we have Hermione, who has awoken in the bowels of Hogwarts. Lord Voldemort has won and the order is destroyed. Harry Potter is dead. Everything we love is broken. And so this book is split into 3 parts. And the first part is actually like the, kind of like a present / like past time, you'll see as we go. And then part 2 is flashbacks to before this. And then part 3 is like, again, like present time and going forward. So Hermione wakes up. She doesn't have much memory of what's been going on. She finds out that the wizarding world is not having many magical babies. And so the healthy breeders are getting paired up and are getting given to families, and they're called, I can't even remember what they're called. It scars me so much. But she ends up given to the High Reeve, which happens to be Draco Malfoy, and he's been married off, but him and his wife haven't had a baby. And so Hermione gets manacled. She gets these magical shackles, and she is going to be given to Draco to be bred every month for, I think it's like 3 days. He is supposed to fuck her and try to get her pregnant. So again, very much like a Handmaid's Tale type thing. But he has a second level to this because Hermione has had her mind broken. We don't know who did it or why or what's going on, but she has memories of the order that she can't access and that the Dark Lord can't access. And so there's this thing called like the magical pregnancy. And if Draco is the one to get her pregnant and they share that, they share that baby in her womb, then he will be able to access her. So he's also supposed to be impregnating her because the Dark Lord says so. And if he's not able to do it in a certain amount of time, then she'll be given to someone else to do it. So that is where we start with this. But let me tell you, when we get those flashbacks, we find out quite a bit of the things that she forgot. So this story is one of the darkest that I've ever read. I actually was not able to reread this one, not only because, okay, depending on the version you have, it's probably more than 1,000 pages. But I just couldn't mentally go to the heavy place of this again. But I recommend, if you have any interest, that you read this book once in your lifetime. Like, honestly, if you have any interest in fantasy, you don't even have to like Harry Potter. I've had viewers who say, like, I never even read Harry Potter. I'm not even into it, but I loved this. Because if you have read Harry Potter, there are obviously the parts of it that you will feel connected with. And if you haven't, this is still one of the best, like, fantasy books I've read, okay? No joke. It's in my top favorite fantasies ever because of what it's doing and what's happening in this story. And this can just be a book with characters named Harry and Draco, Hermione, Snape. Like, it can just be a book that has those in it, okay? You can get this for free on AO3. I'll have the link to that down below. You can get it downloaded to your phone or your Kindle. Again, I have videos about how to do that. You can look it up. It takes 5 minutes and then you can have it. You can also listen to it on Spotify because these books can't be copywritten. People can make audiobooks of them when they want to. So you can look up Manacled on Spotify and you can find it on audio if you'd prefer to do that. But this book, I will never forget this fanfic. It started my love of it all, and this book had to be on my favorites list. It just had to be there. It was so powerful and so moving. And this book was a 2.5 on my Swoon scale and a 3 on my Spice scale. Okay. All right. So that was number 3 on my list. Now I have a tie for second place. So both of these books, they're second place for very different reasons. And when I realized that I had a tie score for them, I was like, no, this is perfect. We're just keeping it a tie. Every other book, I leveled it out, like I said, I had 6 books that had the same score and I moved those around how I wanted to, but these 2, I kept them both tied at number 2. So we'll go with, one at a time. So in second place is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I mean, what is there else to say that I haven't said about this book? This is a second chance romance, contemporary romance. This is a story that is almost too real. It is almost too full of the pain that we see day to day, but yet Kennedy Ryan is able to bring an inspiration and a beauty to it that gives you hope that is very real, right? Like, that is the balance of this. Like, there is pain and agony that is very real, and then there's the hope of love and second chance that is very real. I said it earlier, second chance romance has a really beautiful place in my heart. I have parents who were divorced. They were separated for 18 months. They remarried again. They've been together happily since then. They had a different kind of pain than this couple goes through. The main trigger warning of this is loss of a pregnancy, but like basically loss of a child, is very late term loss. And it caused these 2 soulmates, Yasmin and Josiah, to get off kilter. How couldn't it? Okay, how couldn't it? And this is a scenario that so often and heartbreakingly can destroy a couple and just ruin them in ways that are so unfair, but also so real. Because how do you pick it back up? This book deals with mental health. It deals with forgiving yourself. It deals with how you, not only how you're dealing with it yourself, but how you're dealing with your family, how you forgive yourself and others, and how you come back together again. And I use this analogy so many times now, but I don't care. Like, Kennedy writes like a lighthouse on a hill for me. And so no matter what storm I go through, the raging waters, the things wanting to pull you down and just crash you against the rocks, but you see that light coming and you know you're going to be able to navigate it. And it might take a while, and sometimes the waves will rush up in front of you and you can't see that light anymore, but you know that it's there. And that's how she writes. And that's how I'm willing to go into the depths of human pain. Because this book doesn't have some of the traumas that these do, okay? There isn't spousal abuse. There isn't rape or trauma or war or magical curses or forced pregnancy. Like, there isn't any of those things. It's just real, raw loss that any of us could face at any time. And I would pray that I would have the dignity and the grace to come through it like this. And what this book shows us is that, like, you can't do it on your own. You know, you can't do it on your own. There's some work you have to do on your own, but we're not meant to do it on our own all the time. And when we freeze other people out, whether because it's necessary or whether because it's unnecessary and we can't help it, that's not wrong, but things need to be addressed. Wounds need to be cared for so they can heal. And that doesn't mean they won't be a scar, but it also means they don't have to define you. They can become a memory that you will probably still look at with bittersweet or with pain, but doesn't mean it isn't powerful to have it. And so this book is beautiful. The way that these two come back together, it says on the back, like magnets, they're always drawn back to each other. And now they're beginning to wonder if they're truly ready to let go of everything they once had. And they're not. They're supposed to be together. And this is another case of like, the pain you go through for this. Like, I wept. This is another one. I could not reread this book. I plan to. I took a picture of it. I had my sticky notes. I was ready to annotate, and I couldn't, because I wasn't ready to go on the journey again yet. But I don't regret the journey, and someday I will definitely be revisiting. I'll listen to the audiobook. I'll be there. It just wasn't right now, and that's okay, because this book, I knew where this book was supposed to sit on my list and where it was going to be, and that is at second place, where it is tied with Anastasia by Sophie Lark. Man, this is one of my most anticipated books of 2022, and by one of my favorite authors, by one of my friends, someone I consider very dear to me. But I don't rate books that way. No matter what the trolls on Goodreads like to say, I still go into every book the same, you know? Well, try to. Okay, I'm human. But I go into all the books the same of the people that I love, like ready for the experience. And this book, the reading experience of this book is one that I'm never going to forget. I'm very excited to reread this one. I can't wait until I have an audiobook to read it and to read it on my Kindle Fire with the color pictures, because this book is, I'm sure you've heard it ad nauseum now, this book is filled with illustrations by the beautiful Lena. Oops, there's the pretty colored picture. These full colored pictures, if you read it on your phone or you read it on your Kindle Fire or an iPad, you'll get the color. There's a playlist in here. I listened to the songs as they came up, and it was this full experience. And I can't even imagine, like, once there's the audiobooks available, which hopefully is coming in March-ish, it'll be a full thing. But this is a historical fantasy romance. That's what I'm calling it. The romance is very important. I don't care what people say. This is a slow building, but there is groundwork that must be laid, like any good fantasy, okay? I feel like we've gotten too quick on the draw, too quick for instant gratification for some fantasies that aren't whipping the cocks out right away, okay? I'm saying it, and I'm saying it to myself. This isn't a condemnation. I've had this discussion with some friends. We live in a culture that's very much right now wanting the corn right now. We want it. And I don't care. Our brains become warped by that. When we're reading the books that give it to us hot and heavy right away, and then we read a book that's like, no, we're going to take our time. We're going to build to it. Whether that's the like action or the smut, we get bored and we say there's a problem with the writing because of that. And again, I'm not lecturing. I do the same thing. It's something that I try to train myself against. It's why I want to pick up some more fantasies next year, and why I want to pick up some fanfics that are slow burning and books that take their time to get to it. Because if we let our brains run away with that, it will ruin our brains for the softer things. It's proven, okay? There are facts about it. That's what porn culture does. That is what TikTok culture does. That is the like, give it to me quick, give it to me now. That's what it does. And that's fun to ride that. It's fun to read a quick book where it's quick and spicy and we love the characters and it's swoony and it's there. But when we're going to dive into a story like this, that can't be what you're looking for if you want to get the full experience, right? And I was ready for that, and I think that I was set up for success by knowing that, okay? I knew that I wasn't going to get steam right this minute or where. I knew that we were going to start with these characters very young and get to see their journey together and see what happens when you grow up in privilege. And even though you try to be compassionate and you have a friend who's sharing the rougher parts of the world with you, you still live in a glittering palace. You still live draped in dresses and finery and jewels and the best of everything. And so it's hard to believe that cruel, harsh world out there when you live in a glittering wonderland. And when those things start to invade, it's more likely of you to not trust those harsh realities than the glittering facade you live in. And I feel like this story really shows us that, mixed with amazing characters. Damien and Anastasia are fantastic. There's just enough history in here, not just enough, there's a good amount of history in here to get you excited, but it is still its own world. This is a world that is its own rules, its own timeline, with the foundation of some recognizable characters. So people wanting to judge this because it isn't historical enough, that's not what it's trying to do. People wanting to judge this because it's not spicy enough, this one is an erotica, okay? This was a 2 on the heat scale for me, okay? It was. I still loved this romance so much. Damien and Anastasia are both such well-built characters. They feel so real, and not because, okay, she's based on a real person. Well, she's not really. She's not based on the actual character and life of Anastasia. It is a very loose framework of Russia in the early 1900s and that part of it. And if you are someone who knows a lot of that history, you'll find a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of ooh, that really happened. But that wasn't the goal. This is still its own story and its own thing. And for me, one of the things I've said in my reviews and the way that I have sold this book to my friends and family, my sister's actually reading this right now, and I'm loving that she is. I love that she is that if you love the 20th Century Fox film and there are moments in that you love, there are ways that Sophie has infused those feelings and those scenes into this book without it copying it in any way. But there's definitely the inspiration. There's definitely the moments you love. Some of my favorites are there's a little bat in here. He doesn't talk or dance or anything, but there's a little white bat that exists. And so you're oh my God, it's Bartok. It's not Bartok, but you know what I mean? It's there. And I just found it so powerful. So this book is on my favorites list of all time for fantasy, and it is my tied for number 2 spot on my 2022 list. And I just highly recommend it, you guys. I mean, if you want to wait for the audiobook, you want to wait for the color, fine, whatever. But this is one of Sophie's that, it might not be at the top of everyone's list right now, but this is a book that's going to come back around and around. This is going to come back every winter. This one's going to be, you're going to be in a mood and want to read this. This book is going to have its day. It's going to have its time. And for me, I'm so happy to have it on my shelf. I can't wait for there to be other editions of this book, and I just can't wait for whatever else is coming. That leaves us at the number 1 spot, which anyone who's been around lately, they ain't gonna be surprised, but I'm only too happy to share that my number 1 favorite romance, favorite book that I read this year was Heartless by Elsie Silver. This book, of course, it's a 6-star. It is a 5 on my Swoon scale, and it is a 4 on my Spice scale. And Daddy Cade and Spunky Willow are just 2 of my favorite characters this year. Cade's going on the boyfriends list. Willow's going on the girlfriends list. We also have sweet little Luke, who's just a joy. I've called this book that like Willa is like my female Tristan Miles, and not because she's a billionaire or because she doesn't believe in love, but because she has that spark where she is unflappable. She can play the game that the kids play. She can also talk down the adults who think that they know best, and she's just so loving. She has such a big heart. And Cade, boy, does he want to dig his heels in. He does not want this live-in nanny to be looking at him that way. He does not want his dick to be hardening for this girl, okay? She is here to take care of his son, and he's going to keep his mouth shut about how pretty she is, but he just can't. Because these two just spark such amazing energy in each other. And this story gave me so much joy. Like, I smiled the whole way through. And this is one that I was so nervous to read, okay? I am someone who I generally, like, if I didn't start the hype, I run from it. I will fully admit that. Like, it is one of my faults. When I see someone else liking a book, someone else, like, a book really, like, rolling out, I'm like, it can't be as good as they say. Like, it can't be as good as they say. And that is dumb of me. Like, that is dumb of me. I have no problem saying that, because I read Flawless, had a great time with it, and then I read Heartless, and I was like, everyone's right. Everyone's right. This book is fantastic, and I'm just echoing what a lot of other people have said. And you know what? I'm okay. I will add my voice, loud and bold as it is, that this is one of the best books I've read in years. And if all I can do is put it on my favorites list of this year, well then, damn it, that's what it is. It's there. It's fine. It's fabulous. And I can't encourage you to read this enough. I have heard very few detractors to this book. I have heard overwhelming love, because it all should be there. This is a single dad. He has a young boy. He is a rancher. He is a cowboy, down home man. Again, Yellowstone is big this year. This is the one. Willa is much, much nicer than Beth, though, I'll say. She's very sweet. And she's a little bit at loose end. She doesn't know what she wants to do. And so when her friend, who is the one engaged to Cade's brother, is like, hey, why don't you come take care of Luke? It's like a live-in situation, and you'll live close to me, and we can have drunk Sundays together and do this. And she's like, I've never taken care of a kid. And she's like, Luke is great. You'll do a great job. And Willa is amazing. I would have, like, if I were to have a stepmom as a young kid, like, she would have been great. And her love for this boy, and the way that she sees Cade, the way that she sees past his grumpiness and growliness to this man who is a caretaker, and he has caretaked to the point that he is given of himself. He's given so much of himself, and it is hard to see because he doesn't keep anything for himself. And so when Willa really like dares him to do some things for himself, he just can't help but love her even more. And he knows he's fucked. Boy knows he's fucked from the beginning. And it's just a matter of time watching him give in. And once he gives in, he is a king, you guys. He's a king, okay? He says what he means. He doesn't let miscommunication stand. He is like the king of consent. He is a dirty mouth. He is sexy as fuck. And these two are absolute fire together. This book just blew my socks off, and it continues to. Like, it continues to blow my socks off. It lives rent-free. It will be there forever. Cade joins the ranks with Daddy Declan and with Tristan Miles and Jamie Fraser. Okay, he's up there. That's a bit of a spoiler alert for my upcoming Book Boyfriends video. There you go. He's there. Okay, he's there. So, oops, we can't totally see it over there. We'll move it a little bit right there. So there you go, everybody. This is my 2022 favorite books of the year. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're not fatigued after how long it was. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being with me in 2022. I can't wait to see what new books I find and what's on this list in 2023. If you'd like to see my most anticipated books of 2023, I have that video linked up here. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to be notified when I update next. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.